Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was the bodyguard of Azula. Naruto is banished from Konoha, but gives them the slip and boards a ship. Soon after, he is shipwrecked on Ember Island and is saved by Azula. 3 years later, Naruto is Azula's bodyguard while she hunts for the Avatar, but did he see the last of Konoha? Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 31, New Students and Old Creatures. Location, Western Air Temple. Zuko, Azula, and Aang stood on a balcony. It had been a full day since the assassin attacked, and now, the two exiles were ready to begin teaching their student. The previous night, Sokka had told Zuko about Aang's previous attempt to learn firebending from the infamous deserter Zhong Zhong, and how that attempt ended in failure. Both Zuko and Azula were amused at how Aang's foolhardy experiment in firebending had resulted in burning Katara by accident, even if it revealed her ability to heal. "I know you're nervous," Zuko told Aang. Both he and his sister stood across from the Avatar. "But remember, firebending in it of itself is not something to fear." "Okay," Aang said, taking a breath. "Not something to fear. But if you don't respect it, it'll chew you up and spit you out like an angry Komodo rhino," he shouted, making the air nomad flinch back. "Was that really necessary, Zuko?" Azula asked her brother while also keeping an eye at their student, who was about to jump out of his skin. "Hey, our teachers did it to us. We might as well do it to our student." She rolled her eyes before looking at Aang. "Show us what you got," she ordered him. "Any amount of fire you can make." He took a couple of deep breaths, took a stance, and tried to bend fire. What he got was a puff of smoke. "Maybe I need a little more instruction," Ji said apologetically. "Perhaps a demonstration?" She sighed. "If you insist. You might want to take a few steps back." He did, and she took a stance. She breathed in deep and threw out a punch. A very small flame, which wasn't even blue, slipped out and faded quick. Aang applauded at her attempt until she glared at him. "What was that?" Zuko asked her. "That was the worst firebending I've seen." He had seen his sister do much, much better. "I thought it was nice," Aang offered with a weak smile. "You think yours is any better?" she asked her brother, ignoring the airbender. He took his stance and tried 3 times, getting the same results as her. "Why is this happening?" he demanded. "Maybe it's the altitude?" Aang suggested, rubbing his head. "Yeah, could be," he agreed. They went lower in the temple. When they found a suitable spot, both Azula and Zuko tried to firebend again, only getting small flames. Azula's flames still weren't blue, they were orange. Aang sat on a broken pillar and yawned in boredom. "Just breathe in," Zuko said as he tried again. Once again, he only got a small flame. "That one kinda felt hot," Aang said, sitting up from where he had briefly laid down. "Don't patronize me," he snapped. "You know what's supposed to look like." "Sorry, Saifu Hotman," the air nomad apologized. "And stop calling me that." "Why should he?" Azula asked with a small smirk on her lips. "It works." He turned to his sister. "You do realize that means you're Saifu Hot Woman, right?" She lost the smirk and returned her focus to trying to bend. Sokka came walking by, eating an apple. "Hey, guys," he said in greeting. "How's it coming?" "Go away," Azula told him. His presence there would not help them in any way. "I was just wondering." "Get out of here." Zuko snapped at him. All right, sheesh." He walked away. "Aang, that's it for today," Azula told him. "Are you sure?" he asked. While he was excited to stop learning how to firebend, he wanted to be sure that was what she wanted. Go, Zuko, and I need to talk, she practically ordered. If she had been a little angrier, she would have used her finger to point at the exit, emphasizing her point. Okay, bye. He was gone quicker than they could blink. She turned to face her brother. What in the name of Agni has happened? Why are you asking me? I don't know, he answered. His fire bending had never been this weak before, not even when he had just begun to bend. Well, we need to figure it out. Nobody saw them until that night, at dinner. They stood at the edges, looking back at the campfire the others had going. Listen, everybody, I've got some pretty bad news, Zuko told them as he walked over to the fire. Azula walked beside him. Azula and I have lost our stuff. Don't look at me. Toph declared instantly. I didn't touch your stuff. He's talking about our fire bending, Azula explained with a small amount of annoyance. It's gone. Somehow, that struck Katara as funny, making her laugh. Everyone looked at her as she laughed. I'm sorry. I'm just laughing at the irony, she told the two as they glared in unison at her. You know, how it would have been nice for us if you both had lost your fire bending a long time ago. Well, it's not lost, Zuko told her, trying to explain what was going on. It's just weaker for some reason. Maybe you're just not as good as either of you think you are, she remarked, trying to be insulting. Ouch. Toph commented. I'll be sure to say that to you when your waterbending has diminished to the point it just looks pathetic, Azula told the waterbender in reply. Ouch again, Toph said. I bet it's because we changed sides, Zuko said. That's ridiculous, Katara said. How could changing sides make someone's bending weaker? That was just stupid. I don't know, Aang disagreed. Maybe it isn't. Maybe your fire bending comes from rage and neither of you don't have enough anger to fuel it the way you used to, he told the two exiles. So, all we have to is to make them angry? Sokka asked. He looked at Zuko and Azula. Do you guys want me to poke you with my sword? Akela rolled his eyes at that. Don't even think about it, Zuko warned him before turning his attention back to his supposed student. Look, even if you're right, I don't want to rely on hate and anger anymore. There has to be another way, Azula agreed. You're gonna need to learn to your fire bending from a different source, Toph said. I'd recommend the original source. How are they supposed to that? Just jump into a volcano or something? Sokka asked. It was full of fire, maybe that would do the trick. No. Zuko and Azula needs to go back to whatever the original source of fire bending is. And what is that? I don't know. For earth bending, the original benders were badger moles. One day, when I was little, I ran away and hid in a cave. She could still remember being lost in the cave. That's where I met them. She had been terrified of something she couldn't see. That feeling turned to laughter when she felt a big tongue licking her, and when she licked back. They were blind, just like me. So, we understood each other. I was able to learn earthbending, not just as a martial art, but as an extension of my senses. For them, the original earthbenders, it wasn't just about fighting. It was their way of interacting with the world. She remembered copying what they did, and the joy she felt when she could bend the earth. That's amazing, Toph, Aang told her. I learned from the monks, but the original airbenders were the sky bison. He turned his head over to Appa. Maybe you can give me a lesson sometime, buddy. The sky bison gave a roar and turned his attention back to his dinner. This doesn't help us, Azula said. If the original benders were animals, then they had nothing to go to. The original firebenders were the dragons, Zuko said, silently agreeing with his sister. And they're all but extinct. What do you mean? Aang asked, a little surprised by what he was hearing. Roku had a dragon, and there were plenty of dragons when I was a kid. Well, they aren't really around anymore, okay. He shouted. Okay. I'm sorry, the air nomad instantly apologized. Maybe there's another way, Azula said, getting their attention. The first people to learn from the dragons were the ancient sun warriors. She walked away from the fire and back to the wall, looking at the fountain in front of her. Sun warriors? Repeated Aang as he stood up and joined her. Well, I know they weren't around when I was a kid. They died off 1,000 years ago, Zuko told him, joining the two. But their civilization wasn't too far from where we are now. Maybe we can learn something by poking around their ruins. It's like the monks used to tell me. Sometimes, the shadows of the past can be felt by the present, he commented. So, you're going to go the ruins of an ancient civilization and hope to get some super sun warrior energy? Sokka asked for clarification. Do you have a better idea? Zuko asked him pointedly. Either we find a way to firebend, Azula said. Or the Avatar has to find a new teacher. Both she and her brother looked at their student as she spoke. And what she offered wasn't really an option, as the rest of the firebenders were more likely to kill him rather than teach him. The next morning, the two resident firebenders and the airbender left the others on Appa. They flew out over the ocean, settling in for a long ride. But after a while, some of the passengers began to get bored. We've been flying for hours, Zuko said, sitting in the saddle and looking down at the sea. I don't know why, but I thought this thing would be a lot faster. Appa roared in reply. Appa's right, Zuko, Aang said. In our group, typically we start our missions with a more upbeat attitude. He groaned. I can't believe this. Of course, you can't, Azula remarked from where she sat opposite of him. Don't worry, you two, Aang told them. You'll get the hang of it. Why do I have a hard time believing that? She wondered aloud. You're asking me? Her brother asked. No, I wasn't. They fell silent for the next hour, until they saw the island they were looking for. They flew inland and found the ruins of the Sun Warriors, which filled them with awe, for even though they were ruins, they were still impressive. They landed and got off Appa. This place is amazing, Aang declared as they walked through the ruins. Nature had partially reclaimed them, but they still stood out. Yeah, Zuko agreed. Even though these buildings are ancient, there's something eerily familiar about them. I can tell the Fire Sage's temples are somehow descended from these. And how, exactly, does that help us? Azula asked him. She could see the similarities as well, but she wanted to know if he had an actual answer. Well, we learned something about architecture, Aang told her. Hopefully we'll learn something about firebending too. The past can be a great teacher. He was about to say something else when he walked through a tripwire, pulling it and stumbling forward. The ground in front of him dropped, revealing spikes. He might have killed himself, had he not used his air bending to get him over to the overside. Zuko, Azula, I think the past is trying to kill me. Zuko knelt and looked at the tripwire. I can't believe it, he said, picking it up. This booby trap must be centuries old, and it still works. There's probably a lot more. Maybe this means we shouldn't be here. He took a few steps back and then ran forward. But instead of trying to leap over the spikes, he ran across the wall. Where's that upbeat attitude you were talking about? He asked the Avatar. He's right, Azula agreed, landing next to them. She jumped across the spikes. Besides, people don't make traps unless they got something worth protecting. And what was worth protecting in ruins such as these? So, we keep going? Aang asked, wanting to be sure. Just keeping walking, Zuko told him. They kept walking forward and soon started climbing a long flight of stairs. At the top of the stairs, they found a mural of two dragons breathing fire around a sun warrior. Look, this seems promising, Aang said as he examined the mural. Though, I'm not sure what this tells us about the original source of firebending. They look angry to me, Azula commented, looking at the dragons. She felt unnerved at the sight of the statues and their depictions. I thought the dragons were friends with the Sun Warriors. Well, they had a funny way of showing it, Zuko remarked as he started to walk away from the mural. His sister turned to follow, only to stop when the Avatar spoke. Zuko, Azula, something happened to the dragons in the last 100 years, right? Something you two aren't telling me, he said. The siblings shared a look with each other. Our great-grandfather Sozin happened, Azula told him as they walked away. What do you mean? He asked, following them deeper into the ruins. He started the tradition of hunting dragons for glory, Zuko explained as they crossed a bridge. They were the ultimate firebenders. And if you defeat one, your firebending talents would become legendary, and you would earn the honorary title, Dragon. They stood in front of another flight of stairs, with a statue of a dragon on each side. One of the statue's head had fallen off and now lay on the ground, which he walked up to. The last great dragon was defeated long before either of us was born, by our uncle. He placed a hand on the dragon's eye. But I thought your uncle was, I don't know, good? He had a complicated past. It seems to be a family tradition, Azula remarked. And besides, the last person to earn the title of dragon was you, she told Zuko. But I technically didn't defeat it, he replied before chuckling. How much do you want to bet that Dad's trying to use that to strip me of that title? No bet, she replied, chuckling as well. It would be something their father would do to discredit them. Wait, Aang said, looking at Zuko. You defeated the last dragon alive? He shook his head. No, I let it go free. Bao Yu still gave me the title of Scarred Dragon anyway. He made his way to the stairs. Let's just move on. They went up the stairs and at the top, they saw a big door that was closed shut. Aang ran over to the door and tried to open it with no success. It's locked up, he told them. We gathered as much, Azula told him, the sarcasm blatant in her voice. She turned around and noticed the column with the sunstone embedded in it. Turning back around, she saw that it was shining down, but was being blocked by Zuko. Zuko, move. He did so, revealing the light shining down on a particular spot on the ground. It's a celestial calendar, just like the fire sages have in their temples. She looked up above the door, and saw another sunstone embedded there. I bet that sunstone opens the door, but only when sunlight hits it at just the right angle, in other words, on the solstice. Monkey feathers, swore Aang. The solstice again? We can't wait here that long. No, we can't, Zuko agreed. But we might be able to speed time up. He drew one of his Dao swords and held against the light on the ground, making it shine on the wall around the door. Let's see if we can outsmart the sunstone. Moving his sword carefully, he reflected the light onto the sunstone over the door. Nothing's happening, the air nomad told him. Come on, he muttered. He held the sword at the angle, keeping the light on the sunstone. His efforts paid off when the door opened. You know, guys, Aang said as he picked up his staff from the ground. I don't care what everyone else says about you two. You're pretty smart. He walked into the room. Both Zuko and Azula shared a small smile as Zuko sheathed his sword. Then they realized what he meant. He looked the room and the first thing he saw was a scary-looking face, looking right at him, making him gasp and flinch back. Would you relax? Azula asked him. They're just statues. They walked into the room and started looking around. The statue they had first seen was just one of two sets. The two sets had several statues, each in a different position. With each position, the statues curved around to the back of the room. Aang read the inscription on one of the first two statues. It says this is something called the Dancing Dragon, he said aloud. Putting his staff down, he took a step back and copied the pose the statue held. When he did, his foot pressed a button, causing it to go into the floor a bit. He came out of the pose and looked at the button, which came back up. He then looked at the other statues in the set. "Zuko, Azula, get over here. I want you two to dance with me," he told them, grabbing Zuko's arm. "What?" they said in unison. That had been something they never would have expected the air nomad to say, to them at least. "Just do it." He dragged Zuko over to the first statue of the second set. "Okay, you stand there. Azula, stand behind him." He went over to his statue. "Let's follow the steps of the statues." They had no idea what he was thinking, but when they did the first pose and moved into the second, they heard the click of a button. "Don't you guys see?" he asked them as they went through the poses. "These aren't dance moves. These statues are giving us a lesson. I think this is some kind of sun warrior firebending form. This better teach us some really good firebending," Azula said. The three did the last pose and they heard something moving. Turning to face the front, they saw a pedestal holding a big golden egg-like stone coming out from the middle of the floor. "Hooray!" Aang cheered. "Wait, what exactly is that?" "Looks like some sort of gemstone," Zuko noted as he went over to it. "Well, don't touch it." "Why not?" asked Azula, walking over to the stone as well. "Remember what happened out there with those spikes?" he asked the two of them. "I'm just very suspicious of giant glowing gems sitting on pedestals." "Of course you are," she sarcastically remarked. "It feels almost alive," Zuko said after picking it up to look more closely at it. When he tried to put it back, a geyser of green slime shot out, sending both him and Azula flying upwards and hitting a grate in the roof. "Oh no, it's another trap," Aang said as he saw the doors close. "What gave it away?" Azula asked from where she was plastered against the grate and her brother. "Not the time, Azula," Zuko told her before returning his attention to Aang. "We can't break free. It's like some sort of glue." Aang ran back to his staff, picked it up and leapt onto one of the statue's head. He swung the staff, bending the air to try and get Zuko and Azula free. All it did was flip them over, so their faces saw the sky. As he looked at that, he realized too late that the slime had gotten his staff. He tried to pull it free with no success. Seeing as the slime was about to get him, he leapt up to the grate and grabbed hold. But he had forgotten that the slime was there as well. "I can't move," he said, trying to break free. "Zuko, Azula, do something." "Me? I can't move either," Azula said. "Same here," said Zuko. The slime continued to rise until it pressed into their backs. For a moment, it looked like it would overflow the grate, but it didn't. "It stopped," Aang said as he felt the slime settle. "Way to state the obvious," Azula said. "At least we have air," Zuko noted. "Maybe if we stay calm, we can figure a way out of this." They did try to stay calm. But as the day wore on and eventually turned into night, the calm started to get worn away. "You had to pick up the glowing egg, didn't you?" Aang finally asked Zuko. "At least I made something happen," he snapped. "If it were up to you, we'd never made it past the courtyard." "Help!" the Avatar bellowed, using airbending to enhance the shouting. But it only echoed through the ruins. No one had seemed to have heard it, except for them. "Who are you yelling to?" Azula asked him. "Nobody's lived here for centuries." "Well, what do you think we should do? Think about our place in the universe?" Zuko offered. "No way, I am not talking about that with you guys," his sister said. "And I'm kicking the ass of whichever one of you is making my leg cramp when we get out of this." She didn't know who was doing it, but she knew one of them was doing it. "Who is down there?" a voice demanded, surprising them. Standing over the grate was a sun warrior, an actual living sun warrior. Hi," offered a nervous Aang, making the other two groan. Others soon joined the warrior, who they soon figured out was the chief. He had them pull the grate free and the three dug out. They were carried down to the celestial calendar, where the remaining slime was slowly being licked off by aardvark sloths. For trying to take our sunstone, you must be severely punished, the chief declared, surrounded by his people. 4 of the warriors had bent fire and cradled it in their hands. We didn't come here to take your sunstone, Zuko told them from where he sat before, still somewhat covered in slime. We came here to find the ancient origin of all firebending. Yeah, right, the sun warrior holding the sunstone said. They are obviously thieves, here to steal sun warrior treasures. Please, Aang said to them all. I don't normally play this card, but I'm the Avatar. No one said a word at his proclamation. Just hear us out, he asked them, standing up. My name is Zuko, Crown Prince of the Fire Nation, he introduced himself, standing up. Or at least, I was. And my name is Azula, she introduced herself as she too stood up. Enough slime had been licked off for them to do that. I am his sister, but I am not the princess of the Fire Nation, not anymore. I know my people have distorted the ways of firebending, to be fueled by anger and rage. But now I want to learn the true way, the original way, her brother told the Sun Warriors. I do as well. When we came here, we did not know that the Sun Warriors' civilization was still alive. I am both honored and humbled to be in your presence. She bowed her head, her brother and Aang copying her movement. Please teach us. The chief was silent as he looked at them. If you wish to learn the ways of the sun, you must learn them from the masters, Ran and Shaw, he finally declared. Ran and Shaw? Repeated Aang. There are 2 of them? When you present yourself to them, they will examine you, he told them, walking closer. They'll read your hearts, your souls, and your ancestry. If they deem you worthy, they'll teach you. If they don't, you'll be destroyed on the spot. No pressure or anything, Azula commented, making everyone look at her. Sorry, I was channeling Naruto. She wished the blonde was there with them. Finish cleaning them up and then give them places to sleep, the chief ordered before walking away. The aardvark sloths continued their slow cleaning, they are part sloth, after all. When they were finally done, the 3 were led to an empty room. They were told not to leave it for the rest of the night. They were too exhausted to even think about going past the doorframe. They practically fell to the ground, already out. When morning came, they were roughly woken up and given a light meal for breakfast. Once they had finished eating, they were led out of the room and taken to another temple building, where the chief and the Sun Warriors waited in front of a fire. If you are going to see the masters, you must bring them a piece of the eternal flame, the chief explained. This fire is the very first one. It was given to man by the dragons. We have kept it going for thousands of years. I don't believe it, Zuko said with surprise. He had never thought that something like that had existed. You will each take a piece of it to the masters, to show your commitment to the scared art of firebending. Mr. Sun Chief, sir? Said Aang nervously. Yeah, I'm not a firebender yet. Couldn't one of my friends carry my fire for me? He felt a hand slap the back of his head, making him yelp slightly. Don't be lazy, Azula told him, withdrawing her hand from his body. If he acted like that, there was no way he could be a good firebender. The chief turned to the fire and bent 2 small flames from it. This ritual illustrates the essences of Sun Warrior philosophy. He handed the 2 flames to Zuko and Azula, before bending a third out from the eternal flame. You must maintain a constant heat. The flame will go out if you make it too small. Make it too big, and you might lose control. He offered the third to Aang. The Avatar was hesitant at first. I'm sorry. I'm just a little nervous. He took the flame from the chief, and he was surprised at how it felt. It's like a little heartbeat, he said in wonder. Fire is life, not just destruction, the chief told him. You will take your flames up there. He pointed to a nearby mountain. The cave of the masters is beneath that rock. The three of them bowed to him, and made their way down the steps and into the forest. Azula and Zuko took the lead while Aang walked slower, still unsure of maintaining his flame. As the day wore on, they got closer and closer to the mountain. Zuko stopped and looked back at Aang, who had widened the distance between the three of them. "Hurry up," he told him. "I can't," Aang replied. "If I walk too fast, my flame will go out." "Your flame is going to go out because it's too small," Azula told him. "You're too scared. Give it a little more energy." "But what if I can't control it?" The memories of what happened the last time he tried to bend fire came to the edges of his mind. "You can do it," Zuko answered. "I know you can. You're a talented kid." When he heard those words, the memories disappeared from the air nomad's mind. The rest of the walk was silent as they continued up the mountain. By the time they had reached the caves, which were two rocks with a hole in the middle of them and connected by a bridge and a staircase, the rest of the Sun Warriors had already arrived. "Is anyone else wondering how they got here first?" Azula whispered to the other two as the chief and two other Sun Warriors approached. "I'm not focusing on it right now," Zuko whispered back. "Facing the judgment of the fire-bending masters will be difficult for you," the chief told them as he approached them. He looked at Zuko and Azula. "Your ancestors are directly responsible for the dragon's disappearance." The sins of our ancestors are not ours," Zuko replied. "That might be, but the masters might not see it that way. They also might not be so happy to see you." "I know I wouldn't be," one of the warriors said. "But once they find out that I'm the Avatar," Aang began to say. "Have you forgotten that you vanished, allowing the Fire Nation to wreak havoc on this side of the planet?" the chief asked, cutting him off. "The decline of the dragons is your burden too." He looked away in shame. The chief slammed his staff into the ground and took a part of the flames from the three. He then split it into two and gave one to both warriors. They took it and sent down the line. Each Sun Warrior would bend a small piece of the fire into a burning circle before handing off to the next person. As the chief walked away, Aang, Azula and Zuko had a hushed conversation. "We could turn back now," Aang suggested quietly. "We've already learned more about fire than we'd hoped." "No," Azula answered. "We're seeing this through to the end. We're gonna meet these masters and find out what's so great about them. What if they judge us and attack us?" "Well, we're the Fire Prince, the Fire Princess, and the Avatar," Zuko said, drawing one of his swords slightly to emphasize his point. "I think we can take these guys in a fight, whoever they are." "I'm not the Fire Princess anymore, Zuko," Azula reminded her brother. She had chosen to give up that title. "Right, sorry." He turned to face the chief. "Bring them out," he declared. "Chanters! Chanters!" shouted the chief. The Sun Warriors who didn't hold a ring of fire began to drum out a beat and chanters started up while also genuflecting. The three made their way to the stairs, stopping in of the chief and the two warriors, who then stepped out of the way. The stairs loomed over them, almost looking like a mountain itself. Aang, Azula, and Zuko all shared a look, took a deep breath, and started walking up the steps. Aang looked back once as they climbed, but kept on going. They reached the top of the stairs and stood at the top, looking at the bridges as the setting sun looked down on them. "Those who wish to meet the masters, Ran and Shaw, will now present their fire," a Sun Warrior announced through a horn that amplified his voice. The three shared one more look together and turned to face the cave entrances. Aang faced one while the siblings faced the other. They bowed their heads and raised their hands, holding their fire in an offering position. "Sound the call," the chief ordered. A Sun Warrior standing on a ledge took a deep breath and blew a horn, making nearby birds fly, and caused the sounds of something crashing in the caves. When Aang heard that, he began to tremble. "What's happening?" he asked, turning around to face Zuko and Azula, who kept their positions. Only Zuko spared him a look when he peeked under their shoulders to see what was going on their end. When he turned back around and brought his hands back up, he realized too late that he had extinguished the small flame he had been given. "Guys, my fire went out," he told the other two. "What do you want us to do?" Azula asked. "Give me some of yours." He tried grabbing Zuko's fire. He held the air nomad back with his free arm. "No, just make your own." "I can't." "Then get some from those warriors. Hurry. Stop cheating off me. Don't be stingy. Will you two knock it off?" Azula asked them as she looked them. What the three had forgotten was the Sun Warriors could still see them and could still hear them. As they watched what happened, every single Sun Warrior shared the same thought. That kid cannot be serious. As Aang struggled to get some of Zuko's fire, he accidentally extinguished it as well as Azula's by knocking their arms down. The noises that came from the cave were getting louder and the floor beneath them began to shake. "Oh," Aang said as he looked back at the other cave. A pair of eyes briefly glowed before a red dragon flew out of the cave, roaring for all to hear, catching the three by surprise. As Zuko looked back at the other cave, he saw a blue dragon fly out and joined the red dragon. The two dragons flew around the platform, circling them. Sometimes the blue one would fly above. Sometimes the red one flew above. "These are the masters," Azula said in awe. Never in her life would she have thought that they would be dragons. "Still think we can take them?" Aang asked Zuko. He shushed the avatar. "I never said that." Meanwhile, the Sun Warriors went down to their knees and the ones who weren't holding fire bowed their heads. "Oh, here it comes," the warrior to the chief's left said. "Any moment now, it'll be dinner time for the masters." "Quiet, Hemgeo," the chief told him. "What?" He looked away. "Everyone's thinking it." Still the dragons flew around them. They were flying in a pattern, like they were trying to say something. Aang watched them and was struck with a realization. "Zuko, Azula," he whispered to the other two. "I think we're supposed to do the dragon dance with them." "What?" Zuko asked. "What about this situation makes you think they want us to dance?" This did not look like a dancing situation to him. "Well, I think they want us to do something. Let's just try it." "We might as well," Azula agreed. "Fine," Zuko agreed. "But if we die because of this, I'm going to kill the both of you. He and Azula stood next to each other with their backs to Aang. All three of them took the first position of the dancing dragon. When they saw this, the two dragons flew upward. They went through the positions and the dragons followed. No one was sure if the dragons were copying the humans, or the humans were copying the dragons. When the humans moved into a position, the dragons twisted, moved, or turned in the same way. The blue dragon followed Aang while the red one followed Zuko and Azula. When the three of them moved into the last position, holding their fists out to each other, they saw that the dragons had stopped moving. They just hung there in the air, looking at them. "Judgment time," declared the chief, his head still bowed. The dragons looked straight into the three's eyes. They held themselves in the air, not moving a single muscle, save for their lips which they had pulled back somewhat into a growl. Azula and Zuko looked at the blue dragon. Both nervous and scared as all hell, but were doing their best not to show it. Aang stared at the red dragon. He was also scared, but unlike the other two, he was trembling visibly. Finally, the dragons moved. They landed on both sides of the staircase. For a moment that somehow managed to take forever, nothing happened. Then the dragons opened their mouths and breathed fire, engulfing the three in a tornado of flames. The three screamed and covered their faces, trying to protect them. But they realized that the fire wasn't burning them. They uncovered their eyes, looked up and saw a wondrous thing. The tornado was made of fire, that much was true. But it wasn't the fire they were looking at, it was the many different colors of fire they saw. Orange flickered into red, green twisted into blue, purple came forth from yellow. They saw all of that and so much more. And that was when they realized this tornado was a lesson. It was a lesson done in the form of a demonstration. I understand, Zuko whispered. The dragons somehow heard him as the tornado dissipated. The dragons, having shown what firebending was all about, flew upward. They executed a loop and flew back into their caves. And just like that, as quickly as it begun, it was over. The Sun Warriors holding the circles of fire let them die and bowed their heads in a salute. Their fire was beautiful, Azula admitted with a voice full of awe as they walked back down the stairs. She had never seen anything like that before in her life, sadly, she also had the feeling that she never would again. I saw so many colors, Zuko told them. Colors I've never imagined. Like firebending harmony, Aang stated. Yes, the chief agreed as they met him at the bottom. They judged you, and gave you visions of the meaning of firebending. I can't believe there are more living dragons, Zuko said in surprise. Before Akawan, I had thought that my uncle Iroh faced the last dragon and killed it. So Uncle lied, Azula stated. Actually, it wasn't a total lie, the chief said, surprising them. Iroh was the last outsider to face the masters. They deemed him worthy and passed the secret onto him as well. He must have lied to protect them, Zuko realized. So no one else would hunt them. All this time, I thought firebending was destruction, Aang admitted. Since I hurt Katara, I've been too afraid and hesitant. But now I know what it really is. It's energy in life. Yeah, it's like the sun, but inside of you. Do you guys realize this? He asked the chief. Well, our civilization is called the Sun Warriors, so yeah. And once again, you've proven why I call you Dum-Dum, Azula told Zuko, a small teasing in her voice. He glared at her half-heartedly before realizing something. That's why my fire-bending was so weak before, he turned to face Aang. Because for so many years, hunting you was my drive, it was my purpose. So, when we joined you, I lost sight of my inner fire. You're right, Azula said, seeing where he was going with this. For as long as I could remember, my drive was to be the perfect princess of the Fire Nation that everyone thought I was. When I said that Ozai wasn't my father anymore and I joined you, she told Aang. I had lost my drive too and I didn't even know it. But now, we have a new drive. We have to help you defeat my father and bring balance back to this side of the planet, Zuko declared, looking at Aang. He took a stance and tried to firebend once more. This time, he got a big burst of flame. He did another one just to make sure it wasn't a fluke. Azula did the same thing. She was happy not just to see her firebending was working, it had turned back to its blue color. Aang tried it too. He bent a fireball, and he was happy to see that he could do it. Now that you have learned the secrets, the chief said, walking towards, his face serious. And you know about our tribe's existence, we have no choice but to imprison you here forever. His statement surprised the three. Just kidding, he said, making them breathe a sigh of relief. But seriously, don't tell anyone. Don't worry, we won't, Azula promised him. She then saw something against the glare of the sun. What is that? She asked, trying to see what it was. What are you talking about? Aang asked her, turning around as well. That. She pointed at she was looking at. But before anyone could turn and see what she was looking at, it had already landed. You? Said Zuko in surprise. He knew the creature that was standing over him. He had never thought to see it again. You know him? Both the chief and Aang asked him in unison. Do you remember how exactly I got the title of dragon? He asked Aang and Azula, who nodded. Meet the dragon I freed. He pointed to the creature, which was indeed the same dragon he had freed from imprisonment. He had grown bigger, and it looked like his whiskers and horns had fully grown. Yes, we were quite surprised when the young dragon had arrived, the chief explained to the three of them. He had arrived in the middle of a storm. When the masters came out to see who it was, they investigated the storm. We did as well. I am not sure about the other warriors, but I briefly saw a pair of solid gold eyes flash through the storm clouds. To the surprise of everyone who was there, the masters had bowed their heads to the storm. They took the young dragon in. Although I am glad to see another dragon alive, I still do not know what those eyes were. I know who brought him here, Zuko told him. Who was it? His king. The chief's eyes went wide. You mean? The question was left hanging, as he was too surprised to fully say it. Yes. But do you? Again, the question was left hanging. I met him myself. That simple statement made every single Sun warrior bow their heads to him in respect. Am I missing something? Aang whispered to Azula, completely confused. Who are they talking about? Even before dragons became rare to see, there was one dragon that almost never showed itself, she explained quietly. This dragon was the first, said to be created by Agni himself. He wanders the world. Many have gone looking for him, most to challenge him, but they never found him. My father and grandfather were among these people. He only shows himself to those he finds worthy, and even then, he has never truly revealed himself. He is the king of all dragons, Bahamut. As she finished explaining, the Avatar looked at the exiled prince of the Fire Nation with awe in his eyes. So do you still want to fight? Zuko asked the dragon. The dragon shook his head and, to the surprise of everyone there, save for the chief, he lowered his head. What's he doing? He asked, unsure of what just happened. When he first came here, the young dragon would have gladly fought you, had you come looking for him, the chief explained. But the masters taught him, and he realized that by freeing him, you had saved his life. He owes his life to you, and would gladly be in your service. You want to serve me? He asked the dragon, who nodded his head. No, I won't take you as a servant. His words surprised everyone there. But before they said anything, his next words calmed them down. But I'll take you as a friend. He held his hand out. What do you say? Everyone fell silent as they waited for the dragon to answer. He raised his head and roared, breathing fire into the air. It flew upwards and made the very air shimmer. Once he was done, he brought his head down and pressed his nose up against his hand. Every single person knew that the dragon had accepted his offer. It's good to know you, Fan Ing, he told the dragon, giving him a name. Fan Ing, Azula repeated. That's an appropriate name for him. I know. Location, Western Air Temple. They had flown back to the temple, Aang and Azula on Appa, Zuko on Fan Ing. When everyone saw the dragon, they were shocked, surprised, and intimidated all at the same time. But their attentions were diverted when Aang told them that they could firebend again. With this technique the dragon showed us, he explained as he, Zuko and Azula went through the movements and bending fire. The three of us will be unstoppable. They finished the movements, earning applause from the others. Well, it's a great dance, I'll admit, Sokka said. It's not a dance, it's a fire-bending form, Zuko told him. Sorry, for a minute, I thought we would be tap dancing our way to victory over the Fire Lord, he sarcastically commented. It's a sacred form that happens to be thousands of years old. Azula stated, walking over to them. Oh yeah? Asked Katara, acting like a bit of snot. What's your little form called? The dancing dragon, she answered, making the others laugh. Oh sure, laugh it up because we're using a form with an odd name. How much do you want to bet there's an ancient waterbending form called the flopping fish, or an earthbending form called the blundering badger mole? That sounds stupid, Toph declared. And yet, it's possible. Anyway, Zuko interrupted the conversation. Sokka, do we have any meat to cook? Yes, we do, he answered. But why are we cooking meat? They had already eaten. I'm feeding Fan Ing. He pointed back at the dragon, who lay curled up around the fountain. I figure if one of you doesn't want to become a snack for him on accident, we feed him. Everyone heartily agreed on that idea. Location, Fire Nation. Sir, you have a visitor, Ming said from the door. How many times do I have to tell you to stop calling me sir? Naruto asked, facing the wall. His hands were chained to his back and his body still hurt from his last session with Yao Jing. I'm a prisoner. That may be, a new voice said, surprising him. But you're still my commanding officer. He stood up and faced the visitor. Bao Yu, he greeted the head of the Yuyan archers, who stood before the bars. My lord, he greeted back, saluting his leader. He chuckled. Normally, I'd chastise you for saying that. But you'll keep doing it even if I'm in here. So, what's up? The archer looked back at Ming, who nodded and closed the door. My lord, I am here to inform you that soldiers who are loyal to you are currently planning to break you free, he told the blonde. His face, which held a carefree look, hardened immediately. What? Yes, sir. Both I and Ming are involved in this plan. We will free you the day they will move you to Lieutenant Bao Yu. He roared unexpectedly, surprising Bao Yu. If you were in this cell with me, and if my hands were free, I would punch you for even thinking of doing something like that. Then I'd have you bring in Ming, so I could hit her too. But sir, the Yuyan archer protested. We're trying to set you free. Once you're free, we'll be able to have you smuggled out of the Fire Nation. And if the prison break is foiled, or they catch you before I'm out of the Fire Nation, you know as well as I do that every soldier who had a hand in this plan will be killed, if they're lucky. If they're not, Yao Jing will get her hands on them. And there was no promise that they would live if that happened. Sir, we're doing this for you. And I don't want you to. He shouted at his subordinate. No soldier is going to sacrifice his life just so I might escape. That's an order. You will tell every single member of this plan to cease and desist. No escape plans will be made, and they will most certainly not be carried out. Sir, you'll never be able to escape once the Fire Lord has sent you to. I know where I'm going, Lieutenant, he cut him off. I also know what I'm doing. Have I ever let you down before? Do you really want me to answer that, sir? He laughed. Okay, fair point. Let me rephrase it. Have I ever let you down when it counted? No, sir, you have not, the leader of the Yuyan archers admitted. I'll be fine, Bao Yu. Look at it this way, where I'm going, at least I'll be out of Yao Jing's hands. If that happens, his body might get a bit of a break. I see the point, sir. He turned around and made his way back to the door. It's been an honor serving with you, sir. You're making sound like I'm already dead. Don't worry. You know I always pull through. You and the others will know when I'm okay, I promise you that. He stopped at the door. He turned back around and gave him a salute. Yes, sir. He turned around and walked through the door, leaving Naruto alone. Location, Western Air Temple. Zuko looked around to see where he was. It looked like he was standing on a mountain ledge. If he looked above, all he saw were clouds. If he tried to look down, he couldn't see the bottom. There was enough room for him to walk around, but if he wasn't careful, he would fall off. I see you've recovered your spark, a voice spoke. Who's there? He asked, looking around. But he could see where the clouds off of the ledge. I'm right here, Dum-Dum, the voice said, coming from his right. He turned to see another human. He was dressed in a plain traveler's cloak, covering his entire body, except for his head. His skin had the paleness of people who hailed from the Fire Nation. But it was his eyes and hair that got your attention. His eyes were a bright blue and his hair was a fiery red. "Who are you?" The person groaned. "Are you kidding me? You still can't hear my name? It's..." At that point, a wind came through and muffled his voice. "I'm sorry, I didn't catch that." "Of course, you didn't, dum-dum. Don't call me that." It was bad enough his sister did it. He didn't need a stranger calling him the same. "Why? You are one. What gives you the right to insult me? What gives me the right?" He repeated. "I have more than the right to insult you, Zuko. I am still pissed off at you. How do you know my name? We've known each other for quite some time and you have the audacity to ask me that?" He growled before turning his back. "Go away. Don't come back until you can hear me. Hold on." He reached out to grab the person, only to wake up in his bed. He sat up. What in the name of Agni was that all about? He asked himself. He made it sound like I did something to offend him. He shook his head. "It's been a rough couple of days, I just need to get some sleep." He put his head down and tried to fall asleep. When he did not meet the blue-eyed, red-haired person again. Chapter 32, Getting in Disguises. Location, Western Air Temple. They sat around the fire at night. Things had been relatively peaceful, and they were enjoying it. It was almost a week since Zuko, Azula, and Aang went to the ancient city where the supposedly extinct Sun Warriors resided, and in the case of the two exiled royals' case, they were able to firebend while keeping themselves at peace. In Aang's case, he slowly entered a routine every morning. "No one can make tea like Uncle," Zuko declared as he poured tea into cups. "But hopefully, I've learned a thing or two." "You lived with him and his tea for 3 years," Azula told him. "You probably would have learned something. Would you guys like to hear Uncle's favorite tea joke?" He asked the others. "Do you remember the entire joke?" She asked before anyone could say yes. "Just the punch line," he admitted. "It was a little embarrassing, but it was the truth." "Then please don't." He just started handing out the tea. "It's nice to get a chance to relax a little," Toph commented. "It hardly ever happens." She took the cup he offered her. "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" Sokka asked the scarred dragon as he offered a cup of tea. "Akela, stay put." He stood up and walked away. Zuko put down the tea tray and followed him. Unbeknownst to either one of them, Azula took notice and kept a close ear on them. "So, what's up?" the exiled prince asked. "If someone was captured by the Fire Nation, where would they be taken?" Sokka asked back. "What do you mean? Who was captured?" "When the invasion plan failed, some of our troops were taken," he tried to explain. "I just want to know where they might be." When he heard that, Zuko had a vague idea of what he wanted to know. "I can't tell you," he said. "What? Why not?" "Trust me. Knowing would just make you feel worse." He turned around to walk away, but Sokka stopped him by grabbing his shoulder. "It's my dad. He was captured too," the water paragon explained. "I need to know what I put him through." "It's not good, Sokka. Please." He turned back to face him. "My guess is, they were taken to the Boiling Rock." "What's that?" He had a feeling from the name alone it wouldn't be something good. But he still asked. "The highest security prison in the Fire Nation," Zuko told him. "It's on an island in the middle of a boiling lake. It's inescapable." "So, where is this place? Why do you need to know? What are you planning?" "Nothing," he answered, trying to keep the conversation from going where he didn't want it to go. "Boy, you're so paranoid." The scarred dragon frowned, not believing a word of it, neither did his sister. "It's in the middle of a volcano between here and the Fire Nation. You guys actually flew past it on the way here. Thanks, Zuko. He yawned and stretched his arms exaggeratingly. Just knowing makes me feel better. He walked past Zuko to the others. Yeah, I'm sure it does, Zuko muttered sarcastically, going back to the fire. They ate their dinner, and everyone soon went to bed. Later in the night, when everyone was asleep, Sokka walked carefully away from the group, being very careful not to wake up Akela or Fan Ing. He made his way over towards Appa and started climbing up his leg, waking the sky bison up. He shushed him, which made him put his head back down. Sokka kept climbing up the side. When he was about to climb into the saddle, Zuko was already there. Not up to anything, huh? Zuko asked. He yelped in surprise and fell to the ground. Fine, you caught me, he admitted, getting up. I'm gonna rescue my dad. You happy now? I'm never happy. Look, I have to do this. The invasion plan was my idea. It was my decision to stay when things were going wrong, he told Zuko as the scarred dragon leapt down from the saddle. It's my mistake and it's my job to fix it. I have to regain my honor. You can't stop me, Zuko. He pushed him out of the way and began to climb up Appa again. You need to regain your honor? He repeated. Believe me, I get it. I'm going with you. No. I have to do this alone. How are you going to get there? On Appa? Last time I checked, prisons didn't have bison daycares. That stopped the tribesmen, realizing he made sense. We'll take my war balloon. He turned around and walked away. Sokka hopped off Appa and followed him. They made their way over to where Zuko had parked the war balloon. It took you long enough, Azula said, surprising them from she leaned against the side of the balloon. At her feet was a small pack. It was obvious that she had been waiting. What are you doing here? Sokka demanded. I'm joining you. You're going to the boiling rock, right? How did you know that? I listen to what people say. Why are you coming with us, Azula? Zuko asked his sister. I know you don't really care about who Sokka's trying to free. You're right, I don't. I'm coming with you to free Naruto. What do you mean, Naruto? Sokka asked. It had been a while since he had seen the blonde, but he saw no reason for him to be at the prison. It's the one place our ex-dad would send him if he was pissed enough. Why would the Fire Lord get pissed? He had always thought that the man had been in complete control. How else would he have managed to keep the war going in favor of the Fire Nation? You really don't know Naruto, do you? She asked with a small smirk on her face. He can be vastly annoying when he wants to. Why are you doing this, Azula? Zuko asked her. It's my fault he was forced to stall for us. I have to get him out. And? He asked, leaving the question hanging. Because? She trailed off, suddenly feeling a little embarrassed. Because what? Sokka asked a little impatiently. Because I love him, she answered, getting all out in one breath of air. Zuko and Sokka noticed a small blush on her face. They wisely chose not to comment further. Zuko also decided the conversation was done. Let's go, you two. The Duke brought Appa his breakfast, which he threw into his mouth. As Katara walked up, she noticed that a sleeping Momo held a note. Was that a note? Toph asked as she and Aang joined her. Yeah, Katara answered, picking up the meat. What does it say? We're running low on meat, so we're going hunting and fishing. Sokka, Zuko, and Azula, she read aloud. Aang yawned and went back to get reacquainted with his sleeping bag. One more thing. Aang, practice your fire bending while we're gone. Do 20 sets of fire fists, and 10 hot squats every time you hear a badger frog croak. Zuko and Azula. At that exact moment, a badger frog went off. Nobody else has homework, he groused, standing up. There's something else, she said. If he starts to complain, his workout is doubled. Azula. What? Why? He protested. If he whines, it's tripled. Zuko, she read. How do they know what I'm going to say? You've never taken lessons from Naruto. Get to work. Azula. She flipped the paper over, still reading. They have got to be joking about all that work. They're not joking. You'd best get to work. Zuko has Fanning keeping an eye out on you. Sokka, she finished. He turned to look at the dragon. Fanning did seem to be looking at him intently. All right, I do it, he muttered aloud as the others walked away. He stood up and went to work. 1 hot squat, 2 hot squat, 3 hot squat, 4 hot squat. Location, war balloon. They flew through the clouds in the war balloon. It was a bit cramped, but the three of them managed. However, the atmosphere was pretty much awkward. As Zuko heated the furnace, Sokka and Azula looked over the side of the balloon. Pretty clouds, Sokka noted after he and Zuko shared a glance and looked away. Yeah, fluffy, Zuko agreed. Could this get any more awkward? Azula asked herself. Sokka started whistling, getting Zuko's attention. What? He asked. What? Sokka asked back. Oh, I didn't say anything. They fell silent again. You know, a friend of mine actually designed these war balloons. No kidding. Yep, a balloon, but for war, he said. Agni, help me, Azula prayed/begged quietly. The awkwardness on the balloon was liable to drive her up a wall, and they didn't have walls. If there's one thing my dad's good at, it is war, Zuko stated. Yeah, it seems to run the family, the tribesman remarked. Hey, hold on. Not everyone in our family is like that. I know. He looked at the exiled siblings. You both have changed. I meant our uncle. He was more of a father to me, the scarred dragon admitted. And I really let him down. I think your uncle would be proud of you. Leaving your home to come help us? That's hard. It wasn't that hard. It seemed fairly easy, Azula agreed. Really? Asked Sokka. You two didn't leave behind anyone you cared about? The siblings shared a look. Well, I did have a girlfriend. Zuko admitted. That gloomy girl who sighs a lot? Asked the tribesman, looking for clarification. Yeah, he answered. Everyone in the Fire Nation thinks we're traitors. I couldn't drag her into it. My first girlfriend turned into the moon. That's rough, buddy. I am beginning to regret coming with you two, Azula said. I'm seriously considering throwing myself overboard. If it would help get away from all this, she would do it. Please don't do that, Azula. That means I have to fly this thing down and fish you out of the sea, her brother told her. So, who did you leave behind? Sokka asked her. Some friends. Like who? Mai and Tai Li, she answered. You mean the bubbly one? Yes. And Naruto, of course. We're done talking about this, she growled. He had enough sense not to push it. They kept on flying, the day eventually turning into night. Sokka had fallen asleep, Zuko manned the furnace and Azula kept a lookout. We're there, she called out, getting Zuko's attention and waking up Sokka. There's plenty of steam to keep us covered, Zuko noted as he looked at the steam emitting from the center of the volcano. As long as we're quiet, we should be able to navigate through it without being caught. As they got closer to the rock, he opened the furnace and put more heat into it, making the balloon rise. It cleared the ridge, but once they got into the steam, the fire in the furnace went out, making the balloon to quickly descend. We're going down. The balloon's not working anymore," he announced in a whisper as he tried to get the furnace going again. Sokka looked over the edge. "The air outside is just as hot as the inside, so we can't fly," he told them. "So, what are we supposed to do?" Azula asked him. "I don't know." "Crash landing?" The balloon hit the boiling water and skidded along the surface of it. Some of it splashed onto Sokka's hand. Although he did cry out in pain, he covered his mouth before doing so. It hit the outskirts of the prison, sending the three flying out of it. As they got their bearings back, they saw the balloon was destroyed. "How are we gonna get off the island if the balloon doesn't work?" Zuko asked. "We'll figure something out," Sokka told him. "I suspected it might be a one-way ticket." "You knew this would happen and you wanted to come anyway?" Azula asked him. "My dad might be here," he replied as he approached the balloon. "I had to come and see. Uncle said I never thought things through," Zuko said. "But this is just crazy. Hey, I never wanted you two to come in the first place. And for the record, I always think things through. But my plans haven't exactly worked, so this time, I'm playing it by ear. So there." He tried to push the balloon into the water, but pulled his hands away due to the heat. Instead, he kicked it into the water. "What are you doing?" Azula asked him. "It doesn't work anyway, and we don't want anyone to find it." They watched as the balloon sank into the water. "I hope you know what you're doing," Zuko told him. "There's no turning back now." "Let's just get inside," Azula said. They spent the rest of the night slowly getting into the prison, making sure they weren't caught. By the time morning had come, they had found a storage room full of spare guard armor. "I hope these disguises work," Zuko said to the others as they left the storage room, dressed in guard uniforms. "We just need to lay low and find my dad as soon as possible," Sokka told him. The three of them were wearing helmets to keep their faces hidden. "Naruto too," Azula chimed in. That's when they heard boots running down a hallway, and they soon saw guards coming down the nearby corridor. "Guards!" one of them called. "There's a scuffle in the yard." "Come on." They followed the guards out to the yard. There was already a ring of prisoners stand around two people. When they forced their way to the front, they saw a guard and a prisoner circling each other. "I didn't do anything," the prisoner said. "I'm going back to my cell." He turned around and started to walk away. The guard whipped his fire at the prisoner's feet. "Stop right there, Chit Sang," he ordered. Zuko tried to approach, but was held back by Sokka's grip on his arm. "We can't blow our cover," he told him. Azula nodded briefly in agreement. "I have had it with your unruly behavior," the guard told Chit Sang. "What did I do?" he asked. "He wants to know what he did," he repeated. "Isn't that cute?" he asked Zuko and Sokka. When they didn't answer, he lifted his visor and gave them a look. Very cute, sir," Zuko said. "Super cute," Sokka agreed. "Personally, I don't find it cute at all," a voice from outside the ring spoke out. He made his way to the inside of the ring. Both Sokka and Zuko heard Azula's small sigh of relief. The person who had spoken out and was now standing in the middle of the ring with Chit Sang and the guard was Naruto. "This doesn't concern you, prisoner," the guard said, spitting out the word like it was something that disagreed with him. "Are you going to make me leave?" he asked pointedly. He pointed at Chit Sang with his thumb. "What did he do?" "He didn't bow down when I walked by." "What?" Chit Sang asked. "That's not a prison rule." "Well, it's fairly simple to do," Chit Sang, Naruto told him, walking over to the guard. "You simply get on your knees and bow your head like this." He demonstrated the bow, making the guard smug. "What is he doing?" Sokka asked. "Just watch." Azula told him. And then, the blonde continued, as you stand up, you do this. He stood up and then rammed his fist into the guard's stomach, making him double over and fall to the ground. That way, he'll bow to you too. That got the other prisoners laughing. Seeing that his work was done, he walked away. The prisoners briefly parted for him, and then surrounded him, allowing none of the guards to reach him. The guard, embarrassed at what happened, stood back up, and threw a fireball at his retreating back. But before it could even get halfway, Chit Sang stepped in and knocked it aside with his own fire-bending. The guard smiled smugly at the prisoner. Fire-bending is prohibited. You're going in the cooler. You, he pointed at Sokka. Help me take him in. And you too. He pointed at two different guards. Take him back to his cell now. He pointed at Naruto. Meet back here in an hour, Sokka told both Azula and Zuko. He ran over to the guard and helped him take Chit Sang to the coolers. It didn't take them long, as the guard knew where they were going and Sokka followed his lead. The warden will deal with you soon, the guard told him before throwing him into a cooler. Can you believe this guy? He asked Sokka as he closed both the doors. Prisoners, he said, playing along. Am I right? Ugh. Tell me about it. Both Zuko and Azula were grabbing lunch in the lounge. Hey, new guys, a nearby guard called out, grabbing their attention. I know it's the rule to have your helmet on at all times, but this is the lounge. Relax. But what if there's an incident? Azula asked him. Yeah, if we're not prepared, we could get hit on the head, Zuko agreed as they walked over to the group. His comment got the other guards laughing. Give it a week, a female guard said to the first guard. They'll loosen up. So, hear anything good lately? Zuko asked them, sounding like a curious rookie who wanted to hear some gossip. You mean you haven't heard? It's been the talk of the prison as well as the rest of the Fire Nation, the male guard said. Heard what? What? The Fire Lord finally legitimized Lady Yao Jing. She's now the heir to the throne. What? Zuko and Azula said at the same time. Never did they expect their father to do something like that. Wow, you really didn't hear about it, the female guard remarked. What happened? Azula asked. I thought Prince Zuko or at least Princess Azula was to get the throne. Did you hear about the invasion? The first guard asked them. Only the official version that the capital was attacked, but the invaders were defeated. The fewer number of facts they claim to know, the better for their cover. That much is true, the female guard said. But what you don't know is that both Prince Zuko and Princess Azula turned traitor and ran away. The Fire Lord sent troops after them, but Lord Naruto held them off long enough for the two to get away. Once he was sure they were gone, he allowed himself to be arrested. The Fire Lord didn't kill him? Zuko asked her. The male guard shook his head. From what I heard, he was given to Yao Jing, who tried to torture him. After a week of that, he was brought to the Fire Lord. He was told that Yao Jing had become the crown princess, and it was now his job to protect her. If that's true, then is he here? He refused to do it, the female guard answered. Lord Naruto said, and I quote, I swore to protect the princess of the Fire Nation. Not the result of what happens when you can't keep it in your pants. How do you know he said that? Azula asked. Silently, she was glad her bodyguard had refused to protect her bastard sister. My brother was there in the throne room when the Fire Lord and Lord Naruto had that meeting. Both the Fire Lord and Yao Jing were furious at his refusal, and the Fire Lord threatened to kill him. He replied that if he was killed, they would be spontaneously sprouting arrows in the forehead. So, the Fire Lord sent him here, with instructions for to be beaten regularly. The guards actually did that? Zuko asked. Some of them tried, the male guard said. But Lord Naruto was the one who beat them into a bloody pulp. Since then, no guard has ever followed the instructions. Is there anything else you want to know? Yeah, about those invaders. It sure looks cold in there, Sokka remarked as he looked inside the cooler at Chit-Sang. The prisoner looked completely miserable. That's why we call it the cooler. He won't be firebending in there, the guard said. He saw someone coming down the hall. It's the warden. Look alive. They stood at attention as the warden came to stand in front of the door. One of the warden's guards opened the doors. So, Chit-Sang, I hear you used firebending to try to escape, the warden said to the prisoner. You should know better. I wasn't trying to escape, Chit-Sang protested, shivering in the cold. He's lying. The guard said. I saw him with my own eyes. The warden ignored him and kept his eyes on the prisoner. No one has ever escaped from here. I'd sooner jump into the boiling lake myself than let that record fall. Don't forget it. Now go back to your shivering. He walked out of the cooler and the door closed. Sokka stood at a railing, looking down at the prisoners in the yard. Hey there, fellow guard, another guard said, coming up to him. How goes it? Zuko? He asked, lifting his visor. He shushed him. Listen, I asked around the lounge. There are no Water Tribe prisoners, he said, lifting his own visor. I'm afraid your father's not here. What? Are you sure? Did you double-check? Even as he asked those questions, he felt like his hope were dying right in front of him. Yeah, I'm sure. No. No. He banged his hands against the wall. If his father wasn't here, why did he come? I'm really sorry, Sokka, the scarred dragon told him. So I came all this way for nothing? He asked. I failed, again. What would Uncle say? Zuko asked himself. He looked up and saw the clouds. Sometimes, clouds have two sides, a dark and light and a silver lining in between. It's like a silver sandwich. So, when life seems hard, take a bite out of the silver sandwich. As he was speaking, Sokka noticed something in the yard, or rather, someone. Maybe we haven't failed after all. He declared, running over to the rail to get a better look. That's the spirit. The exiled prince said. I can't believe that worked. I didn't even know what I was saying. No, what you said made no sense at all. But look. He pointed down to a prisoner sitting on a rock. It's Suki. Before Zuko could really ask who Suki was, a bell rang off. Prisoners, back in your cells. Ordered a guard. All the prisoners began to move back inside. The door to Naruto's cell opened, making him look over to see who it is. How lucky for me, the warden's come to visit me, he said sarcastically as the warden stepped into his cell. I'd greet you, but I don't like you. I hear you humiliated one of my guards this morning, Lord Naruto, the warden said, making the Lord sound like it should be in the garbage heap. Don't bother calling me Lord. I know you hate saying it. As for your guard, you heard right. They just give me so many opportunities, it's hard to resist, he remarked with a small grin. It's too bad this prison doesn't have solitary confinement. You would spend the rest of your life there. In case you haven't noticed, this entire prison is solitary confinement. We're in the middle of a boiling lake, how more confined do you want to get? You should know that you will be properly punished for your actions, the warden told him, ignoring the question. What? You're gonna have the guards try to beat me black and blue again? You do remember what happened last time, right? The warden gave him a cruel smile. Oh, don't worry, you'll find out soon enough. He turned around and walked out of the cell, the door closed behind him. What did he mean by that? He asked as he sat back down on the bed. It was just a slab of metal attached to the side of the wall. He hadn't even been given the common courtesy of a mattress or a pillow. I don't know, Kit, the QB said. But you should probably be careful. Whatever your punishment I have a feeling it won't be good. Yeah, I have that same feeling. Suki lay on the bedding, staring up at the wall. When she heard the door open and saw a guard come in, she sat up. What is it? Did I do something wrong? She asked. You mean you don't recognize me? The guard asked. You people all look the same to me. That's funny. I would remember the guy I had kissed and felt up at the same time, he said with a smirk. How do you know? She started to say, standing up from the bed, when she remembered where she had seen that smirk before. Sokka? She asked hesitantly. His reply was to simply take off the helmet. Sokka, it's you. She rushed over and gave him a tight hug. He returned it with equal measure. I'm so sorry I made you go through torture, Suki, he whispered. Never had he wanted to kill someone then when he had heard about what the Kyoshi warrior had gone through. She didn't know how he knew that, but she didn't care at that point. It's okay, I got through it. I knew you would come for me. The other Kyoshi warriors, are they here? He asked her, breaking the hug somewhat. No. I don't know where they are, she answered. They locked me in here because I'm the leader. Well, you won't be here for long. Long. I'm busting you out. I'm so glad to see you, Sokka. The two of them shared a kiss. Meanwhile, Zuko stood guard outside. When he saw a guard coming, he tapped on the door, alerting Sokka. When the guard came up to the cell, he stood in her way. Excuse me, she said. I need to get into that cell. No, you can't go in there. He told her. The lights are out. The prisoner could sneak up on you. Step aside, fool, she ordered, putting her hand on his shoulder. He grabbed the arm and used it to slam her into the door. Hey, what are you doing? The two of them began to struggle with each other. As that went on, Sokka put his helmet back on and snuck out of the cell. The guard saw him. Guard, help. I think he's an imposter. Arrest him. She ordered. Get him off me and arrest him. He walked over to the two, grabbed Zuko by the arm, and threw him down to the ground. You're under arrest. He declared. Don't worry, I'll find Azula, and we'll figure it out, he whispered as he pulled him up off the ground. What is going on now? Azula asked herself as nearby guards all seemed to be in a rush, running down the corridor one or another. Finding Sokka nearby, she went over to him. What happened? Zuko got caught, he told her in a whisper. What? How could he have been caught now of all times? You hurt me. Just what we need, a complication, she groaned quietly. Trust her dum-dum of a brother to make things complicated. Well, where were you? I was trying to find Naruto. Any luck? None. Once she had left the lounge, she had looked high and low for her bodyguard. But since she did not know where he was, it became rather pointless. Zuko had been forced into prison garb and was now standing in an empty room. It had felt like an hour when the door finally opened, showing the warden. Well. I never thought I'd find you in here, Prince Zuko, he said with an evil smile. How did you know who I am? Zuko asked. How could I not? You broke my niece's heart. You're my uncle? He asked, surprised by the fact. I never meant to hurt her. Quiet. The warden barked at him. You're my special prisoner now. And you'd best behave. If these criminals found out whom you are, the traitor prince who let his nation down, why they'd tear you to shreds. I think I'd have one person amongst those prisoners who would back me up. He knew Naruto would help him. Don't be so sure about that. So, what's in it for you? He asked, crossing his arms. Why don't you just tell my father and collect a reward? Oh, in due time, believe me, I intend to collect. I just have one question for you. Where is Princess Azula? We went our separate ways after we escaped from the Fire Nation, he lied. He may be a prisoner, but there was no way he was giving up his sister. The warden said nothing in return. He simply walked out of the room, leaving Zuko alone. Later, he was let out of the room and was handed a mop. When Sokka and Azula found him, he was mopping the floor next to Suki. Oh good, you guys have met, Sokka said. Actually, we met a long time ago, Suki said. We did? Zuko asked. Yeah, you kinda burned down my village. Oh, sorry about that, nice to see you again. What else could he have said? He is such a dum-dum, Azula muttered. They made sure to remain unseen as they talked. Fortunately, the side of the stairs they were mopping ended in a corner, keeping them hidden. So, listen, I think I have an escape plan, Sokka told everyone. I checked out the coolers again. The point of them is to keep firebenders contained, right? Yeah. Yeah. Zuko answered, waiting to see where he was going with this. So, they're completely insulated and sealed to keep the cold in. Well, to keep the cold in, it also has to keep the heat out, right? Just get to the point, Sokka, Suki told him. Azula nodded in agreement. She wanted him to hurry it up. It's a perfect boat for getting through the boiling water. Zuko, Suki, and Azula all shared a look. The cooler is a boat? Asked Zuko. Are you sure? I'm telling you, it'll work. I walked around the perimeter. There's a blind spot between two guard towers. It's the perfect launching point. I already tested it out. We'll roll the cooler into the water and just float with the current. It'll take us straight across. If we don't make a sound, no one will notice. And bing bang boom, we're home free. But how are you going to get the cooler out? Suki asked. Yeah, how are you going to get the cooler out? Asked Chit Sang. He stood on the stairs looking down on them, before jumping over the rail and joining their meeting. We didn't say that, Sokka instantly lied to him. Yeah, you heard wrong, Zuko agreed. I heard you're hatching an escape plan, and I want in, the prisoner told them. There's nothing to get in on. Leave now or you won't like the outcome, Azula threatened him. Well, I can come with you, or the warden finds out, he threatened in return. I guess we have no choice, Suki admitted. If the warden found out, they would be dead before they could make a move. Okay, you're in, Sokka told Chit Sang. He gave Zuko a wench. Now, first we need someone to unbolt the cooler from the inside. Oh, I can get you inside, Chit Sang promised. He stood up, walked in full view of the guards and just stood there. A few seconds later, Zuko backed into him, mopping the floor. Hey! What are you, stupid? Watch where you're going. He grabbed Zuko and shoved him away. Hey, you watch who you're shoving. He pushed him into the middle of the room, getting people's attention. I think you mean whom I'm shoving. The two of them began to fight or, at least, fake a fight. As the prisoners began to cheer and urge the fight on, Sokka ran over to it. I need backup over here. He shouted. Chit Sang tossed Zuko to the ground. He leapt into the air and tried to do a flying elbow on him, but the younger of the two rolled away and bent fire at him, which he avoided by hopping into the air. No fire bending, a guard told Zuko, breaking through the thin crowd. Into the cooler. As Zuko was led away, Sokka shared a quick look with Suki, who was still mopping the floor, before walking away. Azula walked away as well, still intent on finding Naruto's cell. Later, Sokka made his way to the cooler. Zuko was here and opened the doors. "I can take you back to your cell if you've learned your lesson," he told him. He raised his head and breathed a little fire, warming himself up. "Yes, I have, completely," he said, standing up and revealing all the bolts and screws the cooler was supposed to have. He smiled. "I got Suki and Chit Sang out of their cells a few minutes ago," he whispered. "They'll be waiting for us at the shore, Azula too. Someone's coming." He yanked Sokka into the cooler and closed the door. "Yeah, new arrivals coming in at dawn," one guard told the other as they walked through past the coolers. "Anybody interesting?" asked the other guard. "Nah, just the usual," he answered. "Some robbers, a couple traitors, some more prisoners, though I did hear there might be a pirate." "No fooling." Both Zuko and Sokka looked at each other. "War prisoners," Zuko repeated. "It could be your father." "I know." Suddenly, things were beginning to look up for him. "Well, what should we do? Are you going ahead with the plan, or are we waiting another night?" "I don't know. Is it right for me to risk Suki's freedom, all of our freedom on the slim chance that my dad is gonna show up?" It was a risky decision to even begin thinking of. "It's your call, Sokka." That night, Chit Sang, Azula and Suki were waiting on the shoreline. They heard something scraping on rock. Turning around, they saw that Sokka and Zuko were rolling the detached cooler down the slope. "Took you long enough," Chit Sang told them as he and Suki helped with the rolling. "This here's my girl and my best buddy, they're coming too." He looked down at the two extra people there. "Fine," Sokka said. "Everybody in the cooler, let's go." They moved the cooler into the water, ready to go. "I'm not coming," Azula stated, surprising Sokka and Zuko. "Why not?" asked her brother. "I came here to free Naruto. I just only found where his cell is. I'm not leaving this rock without him," she told him firmly. Her feet were planted, and she didn't look like she was going to move willingly. "That's your choice." He turned to face Sokka, who had uncovered his water tribe gear from where he had stowed it, and put on his Jien. "But are you sure you want to go? You're the one who said you wanted to redeem yourself." "Redeem your honor. Rescuing your dad is your chance." "Your dad?" repeated Suki, surprised to hear that little tidbit of information. Sokka turned to face them. "If I had just cut my losses at the invasion, maybe we wouldn't be in this mess," he told them. "Maybe sometimes it's better to call it quits before you fail." "No, it's not," Zuko told him. "Look, Sokka, you're going to fail a lot before things work out." "That's supposed to make feel better?" he asked, standing up and walking away. "Even though you'll probably fail over and over and over again. Seriously, not helping. You have to try every time." The scarred dragon walked forward and grabbed his shoulder. "You can't quit because you're afraid you might fail. Hey, if you two are done cuddling, can we get a move on?" Chit Sang asked pointedly. "No. I'm staying," Sokka declared, earning a nod of approval from Azula. "You guys go. You've been here long enough," he told Suki. "I'm not leaving without you, Sokka," she replied. "I'm staying too," Zuko said. "Not me, I'm out," Chit Sang declared. He pushed the cooler into the water and hopped in. "Let's roll, baby." "We gave up our only chance of escaping," Sokka stated as they watched the cooler float away. "I hope we haven't made a huge mistake." The cooler floated away on the current. The problem was the current was a slow one. By the time morning had come around, the passengers were sweating and still in view of the prison. "This current is so slow," Chit Sang groused. He stood up and ripped a piece off the cooler. I can use this to paddle. When he put the makeshift paddle into the water, some of it splashed onto his hand. He dropped the paddle, stared at his hand, and then screamed loudly in pain. He would later claim it was a manly yell. His scream managed to attract the attention of a guard. The alarm bell rang, and the warden showed up on the wall. Guards, secure the perimeter and lock down the prisoners. Now, he ordered. The guards kept control over the prisoners by use of fire whips. While this all went on, Sokka, Zuko, Azula and Suki were trying to sneak back into the prison. The plan failed. They're caught, Sokka announced as they heard the alarm go off and the guards disappearing. They moved along the outside of the wall faster. Get the fugitives and throw them in the cooler, the warden ordered as he stood next to a large ballista. They are in a cooler, sir, a guard manning the ballista told him. Ones that bolted down and not floating in the water. This is a lockdown. We have new prisoners arriving. Everything must be completely secure. The guard got the point. He aimed the ballista down at the cooler and fired the bolt. It hit the cooler and the line tightened up, pulling it back to the prison. Sokka and the others managed to get back into the prison. The gondola's moving, Sokka stated as they watched with a clear view of the gondola. The car came into the platform and stopped. This is it. If my dad's not there, we risked everything for nothing. We had to, Suki told him, taking his hand. Come on, he urged the gondola as it stopped, trying to will its door opened. One of the guards opened the car door and the first prisoner stepped out. Is that him? Zuko asked the tribesman. My dad doesn't have a nose ring. He turned his attention back to the gondola. Where is he? He asked as the prisoners walked out of the car. Finally, the last one got out. That's it? That can't be it. I'm sorry, Sokka, Suki told him. Oh no. He had risked everything again, and nothing had come of it. Hey you, said one of the guards, getting their attention again. Get off the gondola. When he heard that, his hope rose. When the last prisoner stepped off the gondola, he was overjoyed. Dad, he whispered. The door to Naruto's cell opened. On your feet, the guard ordered. What did I do this time? Naruto asked, not moving from his slab of a bed. 3 more guards entered the cell. You didn't do anything. It's time for your punishment. The blonde was yanked off the bed and led out of the cell. Chapter 33, Riots and Getting Out. Location, Fire Nation. Line them up for the warden. One of the warden's guards ordered. The prisoners were moved into a line. They were 8 in all, Hakoda included. Both Sokka and Azula made their way up to the gondola tower. Dad, Sokka said as he saw his father standing in the line. His hopes were rising. Maybe this trip would be worth it after all. We don't have all day here, Sokka, Azula told him pointedly. They needed to move into sight. Right. They both moved forward towards the guards. Excuse us, coming through. Through. The warden wants us over there. Sorry, Sokka told the other guards and they made their way into the line. Welcome to the Boiling Rock, the warden said to the prisoners, walking down the line. I'm sure you've all heard the horrible rumors about our little island. Well, I just want to tell you that they don't have to be true, as long as you do everything I say. He stopped in front of Hakoda. Look me in the eye when I'm talking to you. No, J.E. answered, moving his eyes away. Oh? You'd rather take a look at my shoes? Then take a look. He lifted his foot and brought it down on the handcuffs, making Hakoda fall to the ground. I know exactly who you are, Hakoda of the Water Tribe. So strong-willed, but don't worry, we'll get rid of that in time. Now look me in the eye. The captured water tribe chief raised his head and looked him in the eye. See? Isn't that better? He turned to look at the other prisoners. You will all do as I say or pay the price. You will all. He was interrupted when Hakoda lifted one of his hands and tripped him, making him fall to the ground. It also made both Sokka and Azula sniggered behind covered mouths. Are you okay, sir? One of the guards asked him. I'm fine. He told them, standing up. Bring those prisoners to the railing. I have something to show them. Everyone went over to the railing, even the guards. What they saw made Azula tighten her grip on the rail. Chained to a whipping post, without a shirt, was Naruto. I assume you know who that man down there is, the warden said. For those of you who don't, he was Naruto, paragon of the Fire Nation and bodyguard to Princess Azula. Now he is a traitor and a prisoner. A few days ago, he had attacked one of my guards. This is his punishment. The guard standing next to Naruto bent his fire into the shape of a whip. And then, to the horror of the prisoners as well as Azula and Sokka, he whipped Naruto's back 10 times. Each time the whip slapped across his back, it shuddered in response. He had nothing to bite down on, so everyone could hear his screams of pain. The only bright side was they were high up and couldn't smell the flesh burn. Azula began to tremble in rage as she watched. My's uncle or not, I am going to kill the warden, she thought to herself. When the whipping was done, Naruto's chains were unshackled and he fell to the ground unconscious. None of the guards bothered to catch him as he fell. They just dragged him away. That was the new punishment for disobedient prisoners, with direct permission from the Fire Lord. I trust you gentlemen understand the ramifications of that? The warden asked the prisoners before looking at one of the guards. Get them out of my sight, he ordered before walking away. As the guards led the prisoners away, Sokka and Azula slipped away. Hakoda laid on the bedding with his head between his hands. When he heard the door open, he looked up and saw a guard standing against the door. Thank goodness you're okay, the guard said. He took a fighting stance. If you take one step closer, you'll see just how okay I am, he threatened. Dad, it's me. The guard lifted his visor, showing his blue eyes. Hakoda instantly knew who those eyes belonged to. Sokka, my son, he cried, hugging his son, who had taken off the helmet. You know Sokka, you should be more careful with that guard outfit on. I almost punched you in the gut. Yeah, I ran into that problem earlier, his son admitted sheepishly. Arg. Naruto screamed. That hurts. He was laying on his slab of a bed, hoping the metal would help cool his back, even if a little. But it didn't, leaving him in a lot of pain. Well, of course it's going to hurt, the Kyuubi said. You were whipped on your back with fire. Be glad I began helping your healing rate right after the whipping. Well, it still hurts. I just dulled the pain, I didn't kill it completely. I think we both know you would rather deal with the dull pain rather than the full amount. He didn't say anything, preferring to lay on his back. When he heard the door opening, he turned his eyes onto it. What have I done now? Did I fart in the warden's general direction and he didn't like it? He asked the guard. The guard didn't say anything. He just stood at the door, looking at him. Please tell me they did not send a mute guard here to annoy me. Again, the guard didn't say anything. He walked over to the bedding and knelt beside it. Then, to his surprise, the guard kissed him fiercely on the lips. He then realized that he was a she. And he knew this particular she, which was why after a stunned moment, he returned the kiss. Hello, Azula, he greeted her after they broke away. How could you tell? She asked. You were the one who kissed me, he told her pointedly with a weak smile. I don't think I could forget those lips. The warden stood in front of a door. Opening it, he walked into the room. Chit Sang was bound to a chair. Are you comfortable, Chit Sang? he asked the prisoner. If you're trying to get me to talk, forget it. Chit-sang told him hotly. I'm not a squealer. He walked past the chair. Chit-sang, I only ask you if you were comfortable. Well, yeah, actually I am pretty comfortable. That got him kicked to the ground. Are you still comfortable? The warden asked him. No. I know you and your cronies are not smart enough to come up with that little escape plan. So you're going to tell me who is. He walked out of the cell, leaving Chit-sang alone with 2 guards. So, where's Bateau? Sokka asked his father as he double-checked the silt in the door, making sure they were alone. Where's everyone else from the invasion? The others are being held at a prison near the Fire Nation Palace, Hakoda told him as he sat down against the wall. They singled me out as their leader and sent me here. But before I left, I met some young women who said they knew you, the Ashinama fighters? You mean the Kyoshi warriors? He asked for clarification. That's right. He brightened up when he heard that. Their leader Suki is here and she's gonna escape with us. Good, we'll need all the help we can get. And you know Prince Zuko and Princess Azula? The son and daughter of the Fire Lord? I don't know them, but I know of them. Well, they're here too. Sounds like 2 major problems, his father commented. Actually, they're on our side now. Hakoda looked at his son with a raised eyebrow. I kinda had the same reaction. After all they did, I knew it would be hard to trust them, but I gave them the benefit of doubt. And I was right. They've proven themselves, and I never would have found you without their help. His explanation earned him a nod from his father. So, do you have a plan? We had one, but some of the other prisoners got involved and ruined it. I don't know if there's another way off this island. Sokka, there's no prison in the world that can hold 2 water tribe geniuses, he told his son, patting his back. Then we better find 2. His dad laughed, and he gave a nervous chuckle. We might get lucky if Azula pulls through, he remarked. What do you mean? Do you remember the prisoner you saw when you came in? His face turned grim. Unfortunately, yes, I do. What he saw, he would never wish on anyone. There were less cruel ways to punish someone. Azula came with us to break him out. With any luck, she's in his cell right now, talking to him. Azula could not help but wince as she saw Naruto move slowly back into the bedding after their brief reunion. She could still smell the burnt odor, courtesy of the warden's punishment. You know, I was expecting you guys a few days later, Naruto admitted. What? She said. She was sitting on the floor and holding his hand. She was a little afraid to hold anything else, as it might send him into more waves of pain. You've just been fire-whipped, and you can still make a joke? Not joking. Why do you think I had Ozai send me here? I knew that Sokka would come here looking for his dad. And how would you know that? He smiled. You'd be surprised at how much reports I used to receive from Admiral Chan, especially involving Water Tribe raiders, before all of this happened. He mentioned 2 of the Water Tribe leaders, Hakoda and Bateau, and how their latest invention forced the crew of one ship to leave, due to the stench that entered it. Anyways, one of my last orders was to have him be sent here. That's why I expected you guys a few days later. You would have been able to get all of us out at the same time. He let out a soft groan as he involuntarily let himself feel the pain. I just wasn't expecting the whipping. She looked at him intently. Naruto, you shouldn't be able to talk, much less complain about it. If anything, he should have been restrained to prevent himself from writhing in agony and cause more pain. Ah, it's okay. I heal quickly. No one heals that quickly. She protested. I do. She sighed. This is one of your secrets, isn't it? He just nodded his agreement. You're going to have tell me them someday. Maybe, but it's not today. His answer made her groan and take off her helmet. I guess I didn't imagine you cutting your hair. He reached and brushed his fingers across the edges of her hair. I kinda like it. Naruto, about that night she began to say. I'm sorry, he told her, stopping her before she could continue. That caught her by surprise. What? I said I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that to you. You don't need to apologize, it was my fault. No, it wasn't. It was mine. I could tell you that I did to keep you safe, but that's not the entire truth. Then what is? I was scared, he admitted. If she had heard before surprised her, this one stunned her. You were scared. He nodded. I was scared of you rejecting me. That had been one of the many thoughts raging through his mind that night, but it was one of the foremost ones. I would have never had done that. But I didn't know that. All I had were my past experiences, and they're not something I like to remember. 3 years ago, there was this girl I liked. He gave a bitter chuckle. Like is probably too easy a word. I had a huge crush on her. But she thought I was an idiot and kept hitting me every time I came near her. Who was it? She demanded in a growl. Relax, you haven't met her. He chuckled, which turned into a hiss of pain. You know the funny thing? I kept coming back and she still kept punching my lights out. That and she had eyes for someone else. When I came here, I had brought the memories of her rejections with me. So I was afraid that you would reject me. But I didn't. And I'm glad. Because I love you too, he told her, looking straight into her eyes. I have never met a woman who can keep me on my toes as much as you. And I don't know anyone else who can be as irritating as you, she replied with a mock scowl. He laughed, and then rose his head up to kiss her. She didn't resist. Sokka walked through the ground level of the prison, making sure he was alone. He approached one cell and lifted his visor. Zuko, are you there? He asked. I'm here, Zuko answered from inside the cell, his eyes appearing through the slit. I just got done talking to my dad. We came up with an escape plan together. What are you doing here? A voice from behind the disguised tribesman asked. Turning around and lowering his visor, he saw 2 guards standing on the staircase. I was just telling this dirty lowlife what I think of him. He answered, trying to sound gruff. Well, you'll have to do that later. He's coming with us. Why? Because we have orders straight from the warden, that's why. The second guard told him, sounding a little annoyed. Could I just get 10 more seconds to rough him up a bit? He asked, punching his own fist to emphasize his point. Fine, 10 seconds. He walked into the cell and closed the door. Take that, and this. They heard him shout, the sounds of punching filling the air and Zuko grunting. Newbie, the first guard remarked. Inside the cell, Zuko was holding his bedding in front of him, while Sokka punched it. We have a new plan, but it's gonna need a big distraction, Sokka whispered as he punched the bedding. Be in the yard in 1 hour. They heard the cell door opening, so he grabbed Zuko and tried to strangle him. All right, that's enough, the first guard said, separating the two. They grabbed Zuko and led him out of the cell. What are you doing? Where are you taking me? He asked them. They brought him to another cell, which only had a chair, and tossed him in. I didn't do anything wrong. Come on, Zuko, familiar voice told him. We all know that's a lie. He said in shock as he saw his ex-girlfriend in the corner of the room. However, his mind only had one thought. Oh shit. Sokka went to the lounge and sat at a table. A few minutes later, Azula sat down across from him. Any luck? He asked her. I found him, she answered. He actually expected us a few days later. I don't know whether I should be surprised about that kind of stuff anymore or not. It seemed like the blonde knew him better than he knew himself. Just take it in stride, that's what I do. Can you get him into the yard in 1 hour? Yes. Good to know. He got up from the table and walked away. The warden walked back to the room where Chit Sang was and opened the door. How is he? He asked. The 2 guards were holding the chair, with Chit Sang in it, upside down, making all the blood rush to his head. I think he's ready to talk, one of the guards said. They slammed the chair down into its upright position. As the blood left his head, Chit Sang started gasping to get his breath back, sweating all the while. The warden walked up behind him. Have you had enough time to think about what I asked? He asked him. Yes, Chit Sang answered. And? You're right, there was another person involved in the escape plan. Who? It's a guy disguised as a prison guard. Only he's not a prison guard. He's the mastermind. He came up with the plan, he explained. The warden patted his head and walked out of the room, satisfied with what he heard. How did you know I was here? Zuko asked Mai as he sat in the chair, his shoulders set in a slump. He just knew this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. Because I know you so well, she answered, leaning against the wall. But, how? The warden's my uncle, you idiot. The truth is, I guess I don't know you. She showed him the letter that he had left her. All I get is a letter? You could have at least looked me in the eye when you ripped out my heart. I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to? Dear Mai, I'm sorry that you have to find out this way, but I'm leaving, she read the letter to him. Stop. Stop. He told her. This isn't about you. This is about the Fire Nation. Thanks, Zuko, that makes me feel all better. She threw the letter at him, hitting him in the head. Mai, I never wanted to hurt you, he told her, getting out of the chair and facing her. I'm sure Azula didn't either, but we have to do this to save our country. Save it? You two are betraying your country. That's not how I see it. Do the two of you not realize what you did to me and Ty Lee? She asked him. Because of you, we were forced to practically become Yao Jing's slaves. We can't do anything against her because our families will get hurt. She's beaten Ty Lee half to death on more than one occasion. What? He asked, his face showing his shock. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Of course, you didn't, you and Azula were too busy being traitors, Mai said scathingly. Suki went through her forms, practicing her moves. It was the only way she could stay fit and keep herself ready. She had lifted her foot into a kick when the door opened and Sokka came in. Sokka, what's going on? She asked. I don't have much time, he told her as he kept an eye out through the slit on the door. If I'm seen with you, the guards might think something's up. I just talked to my dad. That's great. Yeah, and we're escaping today, on the gondola. What? My dad and I came up with the plan together. We're gonna commandeer the gondola, and we're gonna take a hostage with us so they won't cut the lines. He explained to her. We'll never make to the gondola, she protested. There are too many guards. My dad already thought of that. He said we'll need a distraction. That's why we're going to start a prison riot. Okay, let's say by some miracle this all works, and we make it onto the gondola. The warden will still just cut the lines, even if we have a captive, she reminded him. Not if the warden is the captive. They both heard a guard coming. I have to go, he told her. She gave him a quick hug. I'll find you before we start the riot. He snuck out of the cell and started to walk away. Hey, you, a guard behind him called out. The warden wants to see you. He turned around and saw the two guards. Why? He asked. I don't know, I didn't ask. Maybe I can schedule another time with him? How's tomorrow? He asked as he tried to walk away, but two different guards grabbed him. He wants to see you now. They took him up onto the gondola platform. Other guards were waiting in a line there. Put him in the lineup, the warden ordered. The guards did as they were told. One of you is an imposter who thought could fool me, he told the line. But now, that person is going to be in a lot of trouble. A pair of guards brought Chit Sang forward. Who is it? Chit Sang looked at the line of guards. The silence was making Sokka nervous. He tried to remain calm, but sweat was coming off his brow. That's him, Warden, Chit Sang finally spoke, pointing at the guard who tried to harass him. He's the imposter. What? I am not. The guard said. The warden just gave an evil smile and walked away. He's lying. He's a liar. The guard shouted as he was dragged away. Chit Sang just turned his gaze onto Sokka, who breathed a sigh of relief. The warden stood in front of the traitor guard, who was strapped to the same chair Chit Sang was. I'm telling you, it wasn't me. The guard protested. Save your breath. He told him as he walked up to him and got in his face. I know you two were working together. You threw Chit Sang in the very cooler they used to escape. It was all part of your plan. That was just a coincidence. The door opened and someone walked in. Sir, there's someone to see you, one of the guards told him. Who told you to interrupt me? He demanded, whirling around to look at the door. Stunned to see who it was, he and the two guards, who weren't traitors, hit the floor and bowed their heads. I did, Yao Jing said, standing at the door. Ty Lee stood behind, looking uncomfortable. If one were to look closely at the acrobat, they could see the remains of bruising on her face. Princess Yao Jing, the warden greeted her. It is an honor to welcome you to the Fire Nation's most exemplary prison. He stood up. I didn't realize you were coming. Who is this? She asked, looking at the traitor guard. He was a guard who was involved in a recent and feeble escape attempt. It wasn't me. The guard protested. Quiet, you, ordered the warden. You're wasting your time, Yao Jing told him, turning around and walking away. That's not one of them. How do you know? Because I'm a people person, she answered. She walked out of the cell, and then through the prison. You know, he might actually be the traitor, Ty Lee said as she walked behind the new princess of the Fire Nation. She whirled around and slapped her hard across the face, sending her to the ground. Did I tell you to talk? No, I was just offering my opinion, she said as she tried to stand up. She was slapped again and fell to the floor. Did I want your opinion? No, I'm sorry, the acrobat offered. There were tears forming in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Yao Jing said nothing in reply. She just turned around and kept walking. Sokka walked into the control room for the cell doors, beginning the plan. Hey, I just got orders, he told the guard in charge of the controls. Let the prisoners out into the yard. But we're in the middle of lockdown, the guard protested. Oh, okay, I'll just go tell the warden you said that. He started to walk away, making the guard nervous. I'm sure he'll be glad to hear you undermining his authority. What was your name again? He asked the guard. Wait, don't tell the warden, the guard pleaded. I'm just a little confused. Hey, I'm confused too. But the warden's in a bad mood and irrational. So, if you ask me, it's best not to question it and just do what he says. Yeah, you're right. He took hold of the controls. We're letting them out, he announced, pulling the controls down and opening the cells. Naruto heard the cell door open. There we are, he thought as he stood up from the bed. The pain had dulled enough that he could walk, if he forced himself, and he had to force himself. He walked out of the cell, stumbling a little bit. Azula was waiting for him outside the cell. She caught him as he almost fell. Do you need some help? She asked him. Yeah, I do. I might heal fast, but the pain is still there. She took his hand, put it around her shoulder, and helped him walk out into the yard. Her eyes scanned the walled interior. It didn't take long to find Sokka. He was already with his father and the Kyoshi warrior. Where are Azula and Naruto? Sokka asked, looking around. Right here, she said, walking up to them with Naruto. If the yard wasn't full of prisoners, the sight of a guard helping a prisoner walk would have looked a little odd. Hey, Sokka, Naruto greeted the tribesman. It's been a while. And you must be his father, he said, turning to Hakoda. You did a hell of a job raising him, a hell of a job. Thank you, Hakoda replied. He was a little unsure how to talk to a man who he had never met before and yet, still had been his enemy. That is, until they both ended up here. And you must be Suki, the paragon of the Earth Kingdom. I'm sorry we're meeting in a place like this, the blonde apologized. How do you know I'm a paragon? She asked, surprised. I read the report Azula had written about capturing you, and I saw the part about how the leader was wearing a paragon medallion. Out of curiosity, do you still have it? Yes, I do, but it wasn't easy, she answered with a small blush on her cheeks. Oh. He realized what the blush meant. Then I won't ask how you did it. Thank you. No one needed to know how she did it. Quite frankly, she was still embarrassed to have done it. Hey, Naruto, is the paragon of the air nomad still alive? Sokka asked him curiously. Yes, she is. But the only time you'll meet her when she feels like it, or if I call in a favor. But back to more important issues, you're going to break us out, right? Sokka nodded. All right, but I won't be a lot of help. What? Why not? He asked. He would have thought the paragon of the Fire Nation would have helped out in any way he could to get out. You saw the whipping I got this morning. I heal quickly, but right now, it's taking all of my willpower not to cruel up and whimper like a baby from the dull throb of pain I have. You're not kidding, are you? The man looked fine to him. But if he were to look a little closer, he could see that the blonde's whole body was trying hard to visibly tremble. He shook his head. Plus I like being held by a beautiful lady. Azula blushed when she heard that comment. She hadn't been called a beautiful lady often and meant it. Sokka felt a hand grab his shoulder. Hey you. Chit-Sang said as he stood behind him. You're lucky I didn't rat you out. But my generosity comes with a price. I know you're planning another escape attempt, and I want in. Actually, we're trying to escape right now, the tribesman told him. But we need a riot. You wouldn't happen to know how to start one, would you? A prison riot? Please. He walked to another prisoner, grabbed him, and lifted him up onto his shoulders. Naruto brought his fingers to his lips and blew a loud piercing whistle, getting every prisoner's attention. Hey! Called out Chit-Sang, holding the prisoner high. Riot. That set everyone off. Fists were flying and so was the fire. Impressive, Hakoda admitted. Meanwhile, the warden was standing at the railing, watching the riot go. Who let these prisoners into the yard? He demanded. This is supposed to be a lockdown. The guard who did open the cells heard and decided to become one with the wall behind him. He also decided to not be near the warden. Ma'am, there's a riot going on. A guard told Mai as he stood in front of the door. I'm here to protect you. I don't need any protection, she replied. Believe me, she doesn't, Zuko assured the guard. He couldn't have tried to hide the pride in his voice if he tried. I'm sorry, but I'm under direct orders from your uncle to make sure nothing happens, the guard said. At that point, something happened. Zuko bent fire at the guard's feet, and when he backed away, he ran for the door. Get off of me! Mai told the guard as he stood in front of her, tossing him off. She ran for the door, but he had slammed it shut and locked it. They looked at each other through the slit in the door before he turned away and ran into the yard. "Hey Zuko, how have you been?" Naruto asked nonchalantly. He threw a guard that tried to grab him into the ground. "I've been decent," he answered with the same nonchalance. "Good, we're all here," Sokka said. "Now all we need to do is grab the warden and get to the gondolas." "And how do we do that?" the scarred dragon asked him. "I'm not sure." "Please tell me he's kidding." "Please tell he's kidding." The Kyuubi begged from within Naruto's mind. "I don't think he is," Naruto replied. "Besides, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of improvisation. In case you forgot. It's usually when you improvise that things go to whack." "But that's when I'm improvising," he challenged. "This is somebody else improvising." Although, he was willing to admit he didn't improvise as much as he used to these days. "I thought you thought this through," Zuko told Sokka. "I thought you told me it's okay not to think everything through," Sokka replied, his voice reaching a higher octave. "Maybe not everything, but this is kinda important." He rubbed his forehead. "You know, it's pretty funny when it's not me," Naruto silently commented. "I know," the fox replied. "And I get a front row seat with you." "Shut up." "Hey, fellas," Chit-Sang said, getting everyone's attention. "I think your girlfriend's taking care of it." They looked in the same direction he was looking. Suki was charging towards the masses, but instead of pushing herself through, she decided to run across both guards and prisoners' heads. Not only did she get the scenic route, she was able to get to the tower much more quickly. She quickly climbed the side of the tower and leapt away from it, her feet somehow grabbing a pipe. She swung herself up onto the railing. She quickly and expertly knocked aside two guards before leaping at the wall and scaling it. Jumping onto the level as the warden, she kicked the feet from underneath a guard and grabbed the warden, stopping him and holding her other hand in a fist. "You wouldn't dare," the warden said. She swung his arm around to his back, grabbed the other one and tied them together. She also grabbed his headpiece, turned around and used it as a gag. "Sorry, warden," she told him. "You're my prisoner now." She slammed him against the wall just as the others joined her. "We've got the warden," she announced. "Now let's get out of here." "That's some girl," Hakoda commented as they got their breathing back. "Tell me about it," Sokka replied. "Can we do this later, people?" Azula asked. "We are on a schedule here." "She's right," Zuko agreed. "Let's get moving." They ran up the tower until they reached the top. From there, they made their way to the gondola platform. "We're almost there," Suki announced. "We noticed," Azula replied sarcastically. "Azula, be nice," Naruto told her. The nearby guards saw them and bent fireballs at them. Zuko pushed Sokka aside and essentially swatted the fireballs away. More guards arrived to help. "Back off," the exiled prince ordered. "We have the warden." The guards saw the warden on Chit-Sang and stepped aside. "Let's go." They walked quickly but carefully past the guards. Once they were safely past, they ran to the gondola car. "Everyone in," ordered Suki as she opened the door. Everyone got in. Azula laid Naruto against the side of the car. Zuko pushed the handle down, starting up the gondola. Once he was sure that it was moving, he kicked the handle a few times, trying to break it. Seeing that the guards were coming, he gave it one final kick, which broke it. He ran to the gondola and made a running leap for it. Sokka held his hand and he grabbed it. "What are you doing?" Sokka asked him as he pulled him into the car. "I'm making it so they can't stop us," he answered. "Way to think ahead." "We are on our way," Suki announced. Hakoda was keeping an eye out the window. Wait, he said, getting their attention. What's that? He pointed at what he was talking about. Both Azula and Zuko looked at what he was pointing. That's a problem, Zuko stated. Standing on the platform, with the guards bowing to her, was Yao Jing and Ty Lee. It's our half-sister, and Ty Lee? Azula explained, confused at what her friend was doing there. She's not here willingly, Azula, he reassured her. But before she could ask what he meant, they saw movement. Yao Jing had grabbed a pair of handcuffs off one of the guards. While Ty Lee leapt up onto the line and ran across it like a tightrope, she used her fire bending to boost her up to the line. She attached the handcuffs to the line and used her fire bending to move forward. This is a rematch I've been waiting for, Suki declared as she watched Ty Lee get closer. The acrobat had taken her and the rest of the Kyoshi warriors down within a matter of minutes, giggling and smiling while she did it. Suki, wait, Zuko said to her. Don't try to beat her, try to force her into the car. What? She couldn't believe what she had just heard come out of his mouth. We need to get her away from Yao Jing. Once that happens, she'll be safe. I'll help, Azula said. Both she and Suki climbed on top of the car. Sokka and Zuko joined them with the tribesman drawing his jian. As the two approached the car, Ty Lee leapt to the front, facing Azula and Suki. Ty Lee, we can help you, Azula told her. The acrobat said nothing in return. She just looked back at Yao Jing once and then started attacking. Meanwhile, Yao Jing landed in front of Zuko and Sokka. She took her stance and swept a low wall of fire at the two. Zuko broke at his own fire bending. Ty Lee attacked both Suki and Azula. Suki blocked her strikes while Azula tried to stop the acrobat from attacking. She dodged both of them by jumping to the edge and swung through the car, to the other side before anyone could stop her. She leapt back onto the top and continued to fight. Ty Lee, please stop. Azula begged. We want to get you away from Yao Jing. She didn't listen. Meanwhile, Zuko and Sokka were fighting in tandem against Yao Jing. She would bend fire at them, which Zuko would block and Sokka would move in to swing his jian at her. At one point, they forced her off the top of the car, but she had grabbed the edge and swung back up with a backflip, shooting fire from her feet, which all parties dodged. In the car, the warden was trying to free himself from his bonds. There's the warden. A guard with a telescope announced. I see him. He finally got free from his bonds and ran towards the window. Cut the line. He shouted, undoing his gag. Chit Sang pulled him back in, but the damage had already been done. He wants us to cut the line, the guard told the others. But if we cut the line, there's no way he'll survive. A second guard protested. He knows that. They jammed the cable wheel, suddenly stopping the gondola, making it shake. Ty Lee lost her footing and slid down to where Yao Jing was standing. It looked like she was about to go over the edge when Yao Jing stopped her by putting her foot on her back. Sokka slid towards the edge and would have fallen off had Zuko not grabbed his hand and pulled him back up. Yao Jing looked at the gondola station and saw two of the guards trying to saw through the line. It seems they're cutting the line, she noted. She also saw the other gondola coming down, the car filled with guards. Then I guess it's time to leave. She grabbed Ty Lee by the back of her shirt and, to the horror of Zuko and Azula, threw her at the other gondola. Ty Lee! Screamed the two siblings. Thankfully, she grabbed the edge of the other car and safely climbed up to the top. Goodbye, Zuko, Azula, she told her half-siblings, fire-bending herself over to the other car. She watched in triumph as they stood there, hanging in the air. They're cutting the line. The gondola's about to go, announced Zuko as he and the others got back into the car. I hope this thing floats, Hakoda remarked as he looked down at the water below. Well, it probably can, but we still won't like the outcome, Naruto said in reply. You're not helping, Naruto, Sokka told him. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, the guards kept sawing away at the line. They were about to cut through it when they were suddenly pinned against the wall behind them with knives. "What are you doing?" one of the guards demanded. "Saving my friends and the jerk who dumped me," Mai answered. The two other guards tried to attack her. She pinned one to the wall as well while sliding behind the cable wheel from the second blast of fire sent at her. She saw two more guards coming at her, who she took care of with her knives, and saw the other guard, who had two more with, charging directly towards her. She grabbed the first and threw knives at the other two, who went flying and knocked one of the jammers out of the cable wheel. She then pinned the first one to the ground with a knife. She knocked the second jammer out of the cable wheel, allowing the line to keep moving, and the gondola moving as well. "Who is that?" Sokka asked as everyone, with the exception of Naruto and Azula, looked out the window. "It's Mai," Zuko answered, shocked. "What?" Azula asked, coming to the window. Sure enough, she saw her friend standing in the middle of beaten soldiers. Yao Jing saw the same thing and was furious. "What is she doing?" she demanded. Ty Lee said nothing to answer her. The gondola docked at the station on the rim of the volcano. The doors opened and everyone got out. Hakoda noticed that Chit Sang was still holding the warden. He pointed to the car and the warden was thrown in. "Sorry, warden," he said with zero sympathy. "Your record is officially broken." "I want to kill him," Azula growled, glaring at the warden. He had a frightened look when he heard that. The glare certainly added to it. "Azula, his pride has been damaged," Naruto told her, gently but firmly. "For men like him, that's enough. Be glad, be very glad," she snarled at the warden before she helped Naruto walk away. "Well, we made it out. Now what?" Suki asked Sokka as they went over the edge of the rim. He was going to answer when he saw that Zuko had stopped. "Zuko, what are you doing?" he asked. "Yao Jing was on that island," he stated. "Yeah, and she's probably right behind us, so let's not stop. What I mean is she must have come here somehow." He ran to the edge of the rim and looked down. "There. That's our way out of here," he announced as he pointed down to the airship docked below. "I can't believe I'm saying this, but thank you, Yao Jing," Azula said. Yao Jing stood across from Mai, who was being held by two guards. The latter could not help but glare at the woman that she and Ty Lee were forced to serve, but while her short-lived attempt at defying her would have ended badly for her, at least she was able to save her former friend and boyfriend in the process. "Leave us," she ordered the guards. They saluted and left, leaving Mai with her and Ty Lee, who didn't say a word. "I thought you would never do this kind of thing," she told Mai. "So why would you? You know what will happen." "I guess you just don't know people as well as you think you do," Mai answered. "You miscalculated. I value my friendship with Azula, and I love Zuko more than I fear you." "No, you miscalculated. You should have feared me more," she yelled in a rage. Mai readied a knife and she was about to bend fire when both of them got a surprise. Ty Lee turned on Yao Jing and blocked her chi, making her fall to the ground. "That was for all you put me through, you bitch," she shouted, giving her a vicious kick in the stomach. She walked over to Mai, who still had a stunned expression on her face. "What? You thought I was going to all of that lying down?" the acrobat asked her. "Apparently not," she answered. "Come on. Let's get out of here." They tried to run away, but were immediately surrounded by guards. "You're both fools," Yao Jing declared as the guards helped her up. "What shall we do with them, princess?" a guard asked her. "Put them somewhere I'll never have to see their faces again and let them rot," she ordered. Location: Western Air Temple. They had docked the airship right next to the temple, surprising the people there. What are you doing in this thing? Katara asked Sokka as he and Zuko got off. What happened to the war balloon? It kind of got destroyed, Zuko answered. Sounds like a crazy fishing trip, Aang said. Did you at least get some good meat? Toph asked. I did. The best meat of all, the meat of friendship and fatherhood, Sokka answered. Suki, Hakoda and Chit Sang stepped out of the airship. I'm new. What's up everybody? Chit Sang asked, waving his hand. However, Katara wasn't focusing on him. Dad, she said, almost like she couldn't believe it. But he was right there. Hi, Katara, he greeted her, giving her a hug. How are you here? What is going on? Where did you go? She asked that last question to Sokka. We kinda went to a Fire Nation prison, he answered. Hakoda just pulled him into the hug. Seriously, you guys didn't find any meat? Toph asked. That's what your concern is? Naruto's voice came out of the airship, surprising everyone who hadn't gone to the prison. How did you people manage to make it this far? He asked as he and Azula walked off the airship. During the ride on the airship, the pain had been whittled away by the Kyuubi. It had been whittled to the point where he didn't help walking around, much to both his and Azula's disappointment. You? Aang and Katara shouted in surprise. Me, he answered with an annoyed look. What are you doing here? Aang asked him. Of all things he had expected, seeing the blonde before them was not one of them. Well, somebody has to keep an eye on these two so they won't do something stupid. He looked at Zuko and Azula. And I get the feeling that you would actually encourage it. He looked at Aang. You brought him here. Here. Katara demanded of Sokka, Zuko, and Azula. He is the reason I went, Azula retorted. Don't even start, you two. The blonde barked when he saw they were about to fight. They heard the command in his voice and stopped. He looked over at Zuko, who had a downcast expression on his face. What's the matter, Zuko? I've put my and Ty Lee's families in danger, the scarred dragon answered. What do you mean? Azula asked her brother. Mai told me that if she or Ty Lee tried to do anything against Yao Jing, their families would be harmed. Oh, don't worry. I'm sure Yao Jing will be very disappointed when she sends for them, Naruto said, making everyone look at him. What did you do? Azula asked. That comment alone meant he had done something. Nothing much, really. He shrugged. I just made sure that soldiers who had served with or under me took Ty Lee and Mai's families into hiding when the two of them would try to either escape or attack Yao Jing. When did you give that order? Sokka asked. Just before the invasion. Everyone looked at him with surprise. Just take it in stride, Azula told them. Take it in stride. Well, now that I'm out, I can finally get rid of this. He rolled up his left sleeve, revealing a tattoo, which was the kanji for storage. He placed his fingers on it and channeled his chakra into it, muttering a quick kai. He got a small cloud of smoke, and when that dissipated, he was holding a spare Jian, his Paragon medallion, and the story he was working on. What? He asked as everyone was looking at him. I only had time to seal the bare essentials. He put the medallion around in his neck, slung his Jian across his shoulders in its usual manner, and put the book away in a nearby bag. What's the book for? Aang asked, curious about it. Story I've been working on, he answered shortly. Any chance of reading it? Asked Suki. Maybe when I finish writing it. So, you're really on our side now? Katara asked a bit hesitantly. He looked at her for a minute in silence, and then looked at everyone else. Alright, everybody, listen up, he told them. I am joining this little team of yours, but it's not because I feel like it. This war has gone on long enough. The Fire Nation has done terrible things, I will admit that. However, it is not the Fire Nation's fault. The fault belongs with the royal flaming asshole. If we want this to end, we have to take him out, and apparently, only one person can do that. He looked directly at Aang, making the airbender feel nervous. People may think you're the solution to their problems. Quite frankly, all I see is an idiot. But if helping you will end this war, I'll put Ozai on his knees in front of you. He tried to calm down, taking a deep breath. Thank you, Naruto. We'll be glad to have you on the team. Good to know. He turned his attention to the rest of the group. Now there's just one more question I need to ask. What's that? Sokka asked. He turned back to the airship. What the hell are we going to do with this? That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.